For the project for the week, I figured I'd go upstairs and dust off this old job that we did a few years ago. This was a pretty high production steel job that we had, with quite a few positional and size tolerances that were quite tight, so the fixturing had to be pretty sound. So this week's video is going to focus a lot more on the work holding and fixturing than weeks prior, because the machining's pretty boring. So here you see I have my custom machined dovetail clamps with fixture plates with a dowel pin pattern and 2 screw holes to hold them in. Op 1 holds the parts horizontally, and as you see here, Op 2 holds them vertically. That lets you be able to move the parts from Op 1 to 2 without removing them from the dovetail to maintain positional accuracy. This is the Op 3 fixture, which is actually machined out of a solid piece of steel, and in that you actually slide the parts that came out of the dovetail, which you see right here. And as I flip this around, you'll see the front of the part is actually angled at 10 degrees, so you can't just set it on a flat surface or else you wouldn't get full contact with those tangs at the end. So as we bring the part destined for Op 3 over here, you'll see there's multiple surfaces machined at angles and different heights so that we can get contact with every part of the top of the part when it goes in. The tops are actually machined at a 10-degree angle to match that 10 degrees on the end of those tangs right there. And there's a pin right there that acts as a stop, so when you put it in, that's how you know how far it comes down. So you basically put the part in the fixture like so, you slide these 2 clamps over and then tighten the 2 screws on the corner, and as you see there, it clamps directly over the entire outside of the part. So when we got this job, I knew I wanted to use dovetail clamps because we could only get round stock for these parts. So I pulled up some 3D models of some dovetails online and sort of used them for inspiration to machine these. We actually made all these components out of 4140. I designed these specifically for this job. Here you see the material as it's going to come to the machine. It's just round 8620, 2¼ inch diameter that we milled a slot in to give us position going in and out of the clamp. And there's a 60-degree dovetail in there, which you'll see it basically clips right into the dovetail clamp once you line the slot up. You tighten this screw on the side, which makes the side clamp on the dovetail apply pressure to the part, and that's what basically holds it and pulls it down against those 2 ground surfaces. So once you got the stock loaded into the dovetail clamp, you come over to the fixture. This is Op 1, and it basically clips into the fixture, locating on the 2 dowel pins at the one corner, and the opposing corners you install 5/16 cap screws. And this is just showing what actually comes off of Op 1 once the machining is done on that operation. Here's the bin of dovetail clamps we made for this job. As I said, this was going to be run in multiple machines, so you see all the fixture plates. There's some other parts that were made with similar dovetail clamps that I designed, but for different size stock. Here's a look at just what it looks like after it's heat treated, but none of the surfaces have been ground yet. And this is just an example of one of the complete clamps with the dummy proofing pin installed. I actually made this revision to the clamp after we started running because I realized there was no way to prevent someone from loading the parts backward into Op 1 or 2, so we put that dummy proofing pin. And here's just an example of the other style dovetail clamp I designed and that we made, also 4140 heat treated, just for narrower stock though. Taking a look at the fixture before it goes to run, you have 6 parts on Op 1, all dovetailed in individual clamps, 6 on Op 2 running down the other side of the fixture, and 6 on Op 3. That means every cycle you're going to get 6 complete parts off. So as I spin this back around, you'll see how the dovetail clamps are oriented horizontally on Op 1 and vertically on Op 2. You see here, this is an example of what comes off when it's done. You flip it over to the next side and rotate it 90 degrees, and then you're going to bolt it into the fixture the same way as you do on Operation 1. After running this job for a little bit, we realized sometimes the dovetail clamps could get stuck because of how tight of a fit they are. So we made this little tool so you put it over the part and it pulls the dovetail clamps off without cutting your hand. As we get started with the machining here on Op 1, my favorite tool, my 2½ inch Dormer high feed mill, just roughing the material off the top of the Op 1 parts. Next up's a 3/8 5-flute end mill. I believe this is running 850 surface footage and 5 thou per tooth with a 40 thou step over. This does most of the roughing on this part. In general, this 8620 machines pretty easily, so I don't really ever have very many issues with tool life on this job. Here's the basic 5-flute 3/8 end mill, just stuck in an ER collet, and some of the chips it just made. So after the 3/8 end mill runs, we call up a 234 end mill that does a rest machining operation, basically cuts the rest of the material out of the top of the part where the 3/8 couldn't reach, followed by finishing the outside with the same end mill. Then up comes the main 1/4-inch finishing end mill, finishing first the very tops of the parts right here, as you see. Followed by the lower step on the top of the part right here on the center. Then the reason we have to have this in a horizontal, we index the machine to 10 degrees to use the face of the end mill to finish the 10-degree face here, and then we index it 10 degrees the other direction to finish this 10-degree face. Then we index the B to 45 degrees to mill these chamfers on the center tower. You'll see I finish everything on this op with one end mill because I want the relationship between all of them to be perfect for when it gets loaded on op 3. That way I don't have to worry about the timing of the tools being off. Then I index the machine back to 45 the other direction to mill the other chamfer on the opposite side. And then I go to 22.5 degrees to put a little edge break on the top of that chamfer so there's no burr. Then we come in with an 1/8 inch end mill, roughing out where the slot is on the left side of the part here, followed by finishing that lower step on the opposite side. Then up comes an 80mm diameter Iskar slitting saw we just used to rough the material out of the sides of the parts, so the form tool's not doing so much work on first side, and then this is on the other side. Now this is the custom form cutter we had ground for the outside profile on this part so that we didn't have to 3D surface it anymore. Just a 4-flute 7/16 diameter, slots right through the outside of the part, indexed at 90 degrees of course, so you're cutting with the flutes as basically you're using an end mill. And then the pallet flips around to the other side and mills the same thing on the opposite side of the parts, which if you look here you can't actually see from the door. Up next is a basic 5.4mm high-speed cobalt drill, just drilling some holes in the opposite sides of the parts, and a quick look at how close the clearance is with the bottom part on the spindle nose to the top of the clamp. And of course, what are CNC machined parts without some nice edge break chamfers? First around the outside of the top, then around the lower ledges, then we index the B, we do the chamfers at 10 degrees one way and 10 degrees the other way, followed by those holes on the side. So moving on to op 2, we take that same high-speed cobalt drill from op 1 and drill out the holes for the end mill. Then we come in with a 5/16 4-flute end mill that just bores out these holes on the end, followed by a 1/4-inch end mill that makes these little scallops on the outside bores of the parts. Then we mill the chamfers on the outsides of those pockets from the profile of the custom form tool, followed by an edge break on the bore. So op 3 here is the same 2.5-inch high feed mill as op 1, but you'll see here I made a little bit of a mistake. I changed it from a 2-inch cutter going slower, and this is what the parts are supposed to look like. But this is what 3 of the parts ended up looking like after that high feed mill ran. I heard some weird noises and I looked. The feed mill actually bent that entire arm of the part as it was going across there, and once the hat broke off, there was nothing to hold it. Once I mentally recovered from that mishap, I ran down the face with my 3-inch face mill. You'll see here there's only 3 parts in the fixture for obvious reasons. Back up comes the 3/8 end mill doing a rest machining operation on the op 3 parts. When I actually ran this job in production, I had different roughers and finishers for every operation of this part, just because of video, I'm using the same tool for everything. Same thing here. This is the same 234 end mill doing a rest machining op on the op 3 parts to get into the small areas, which was actually a different rougher than it is in this video. And the 234 end mill then finishes these outside reliefs that got roughed out by the 3/8. Back in with the 1/4 inch finisher again. First we finished the little floors and wall right there on where that ramp is. And then we finished the opposite side indexed at 10 degrees the other way as in op 1. Pallet turns around where I can't actually see the back, and I just thought I'd give you a little look at how I have to check for clearances here. You see the spindle nose doesn't have a ton of room to the pallet itself, and this is the view you actually get as it's machining the side feature at the other side of the pallet. Then it indexes over and does this chamfer, but as you see here, when it goes down, there is not a lot of clearance on this side either from the spindle nose to the side of the Tombstone. The 1/8 inch end mill comes back, does the rest of the finishing, and then after some edge breaks, the parts are done. So these parts were mainly just about me figuring out how the ideal way for me to want to run tens of thousands of these actually were. So this is the Tombstone you saw that's modeled with the op 1, 2, and 3 fixture on each side. As I hide the op 1 parts here, you can see there's my dovetail clamps that we made with the clamping block and the actual slide piece. And on the op 2 side with the same clamps but rotated up at 90 degrees. So I'm going to hide both the op 1 and op 2 parts here, and you'll see that all it is basically the same clamps just rotated around. As far as the op 3 fixture goes, you see my little clamping blocks on the outside that are slotted out so you can slide them out of the way. And as I hide these, you can more clearly here see how you have the pads that are milled at 10 degrees, and then all 3 of the pads that are finished by that 1/4 inch end mill, along with a relief around the side, which wasn't actually on the part, but in order to get the tool around there to machine that feature, I had to make that clearance. You see the 10 degrees on the outside of the clamps, which actually matches the part as well. So that way when the clamps slide in place, they're clamping directly over that 10-degree part. So you see here how the parts are actually touching on all the surfaces at once. That helped to dampen the vibration that I was worried I was going to get out at the end of those prongs. You can kind of make it out here, but there's actually a 4-bolt and 2 dowel pin pattern behind each one of these clamps to mount the plates onto the Tombstone. That way these fixtures are actually interchangeable with each other if you wanted to swap them around, put 2 op 1s or 2 op 2s or 2 op 3s on one Tombstone, just depending on the quantity or the amount of machines we wanted to use for this job. So jumping over into the manufacturer workspace for this, you can see right here I have a separate setup for op 1, 2, and 3. I didn't actually use rest machining for the stock to leave. I actually just did modeled stock for each operation. And this job was all about patterns. I programmed it off one part and then patterned it down for each one. So as I just quickly regenerate all this stuff right here, which takes a second, you see the modeled stock with the dovetail in it right there, and my origin is actually the dowel pin hole in my base plate. So basic 3D adaptive, just roughing the outside out. Then you'll see the rest machining op for the 234, just taking everything out that it couldn't. And if you see here, these are all my finishing ops, which I was doing with a 1/4 inch end mill, just using tool orientation with that face selected to make it index to 10 degrees. And if you notice, all of these ops that are finishing things are all the same tool. And as I said earlier, that's just to make sure that all of those depths and the relationship between all those features are all maintained as the parts get ran, not reliant on the tool heights being correct. And in all reality, you'd never use the same finishing end mill for all the ops, but because this was a demo I did, but when we were in actual production, I actually had different tools for every single operation. This job was over 60 tools when I ran it originally. So, jumping over here, this is the op 3 fixture plate. I had one set up here to put the mounting holes in to mount it to the Tombstone, followed by all the machining ops for the plate. You see here, started out basic 3/8 end mill, gets everything it can, finishes those surfaces at 10 degrees, being in a horizontal. Then I go in here with a smaller end mill, the same 234, to get to everything the 3/8 couldn't. You see here. Then I go in here with an even smaller end mill to get to everything that one couldn't, back in with the 1/8 inch. And then you'll see down here, after the 1/8 inch gets finished, the next one is 1/16 of an inch, which, as you see here, nibbles its way through that clearance that I had to make on the outside of that. Otherwise, there would have been no room for the tool to actually machine around the outside of those bosses. So I'm not going to say this fixture was actually easy to do or hard to do, or this whole process. Just took a little bit of thinking of figuring out how I actually wanted to make these parts given the high volume production I had to do. And with that, I thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you back hopefully next week, and let's get back to work.